Hello and welcome to my Woolly PhD, episode number 48. My name's Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm currently learning and making in my PhD all about wool. So this week, it's been so exciting. It's a bit sad. It's not, it's just academically exciting. So I started reading this book. It's called Real Pigs, Shifting Values in the Field of Local Pork by Brad Weiss. Now, the other week when I was on campus, I was telling an academic at uni about the pigs that I had been working with and learning with in Iceland, and they thought I would love this book, and I do. I'm barely into it, and it's so great. And a key theme throughout the book is about this notion of authentic. So it's called Real Pig. So this idea about what is a real pig or real pork product as well. And really exploring the ways in which this idea of what is authentic or real is constructed through historical context, through location, through distances between, where something is grown to where it's produced to where it's consumed. Also the methods of production, like the growing, the breeding and the growing of the pig, the methods of processing, so the butchering and the food preparation, the eating. So all these different things can make us, or different cultures, I guess, have different ideas about what is authentic and what isn't. I mean, I guess some don't even, maybe it's not a big issue. Authenticity might not appear as like something of interest in a culture, or it might just apply to some things, not other things. Like that's probably more the case. I've not really looked not at all across much literature about this authenticity stuff, but it did get me thinking, of course, about wool. So we're not going to keep talking about pigs, but if you love pigs, I think this is really good. Most chapters he's like just hanging out with different pig farmers in the local area. Very interesting. Anyway, it got me thinking about wool and how we think about authenticity in yarns for knitting, right? So now for this discussion, and this was a little experiment too if you want to join in on the experiment, but I'm going to make the scope more manageable and just rule out all other fibres. So we're not talking about synthetics. It's a very hot topic about authenticity or realness. We're also not talking about any non-animal fibres like cotton or hemp or linen. So we're just going to keep it to wool. It could be sheep, it could be goat, it could be camel, it could be yak, it could be alpaca, it could be llama, but no pet fibres either, no rabbits, no silk. So 4 legs, roams the land, those kind of fibres. Now, I think, no dogs. Okay. So I think many people have a continuum of realness or authenticity, right, in their minds when it comes to wool. So many people, many knitters, many crocheters, many people who work with fibres. And not everyone, of course. But yeah, so not everyone will have it. And then some people will have it and it's very important to them. The notion of authenticity, or what they deem to be more authentic, is an important criteria for their yarn choices. And then other people might have the sort of this continuum of what's more or less authentic, but it's not a big driver in their, let's say, in their yarn preferences. So I'm thinking these are the kind of how this might play out. I'm definitely in that category of I do have a continuum of what I deem more authentic or less, and it is increasingly a driver in my preferences. But let's experiment together to see what we can notice about why we deem some things more authentic than others. And if you don't, well, that's okay. It still might be interesting to you. But so I'm going to show you some different wools and tell you what I know about them. And then you see, how would you rank them in terms of authenticity as wool? Okay, so they're all wool. How would you rank them? And it's not a rational exercise, so don't worry about if it doesn't make sense. It will absolutely make sense to the anthropological mind, but not so much to the rational mind. So I'm not saying they're opposites. Anthropological minds can also be very rational, but they're not necessarily looking for hyper-rational explanations. We're looking for socially constructed, subjective not rationalizations, subjective ways of being and thinking about the world, not rational ways of being and thinking in the world. Right, so, okay, the wools. No particular order. This wool, you can have a look at it. This is from the commercial wool factory in Iceland. And so most of this is Icelandic wool, and it comes from sheep in Iceland. It's gathered up from farmers, goes to a scouring facility in the north, and then goes down to the southwest for milling. And it's a big mill. It's a small big mill. It's not a big mill, but it's pretty impressive. And so in the mill there, it is dyed, and kind of, I guess, the combing or brushing, drum carding preparation is done there, and it's spun there. This is a dyed wool. And what else do I know about this? It's not 100% Icelandic. It also contains mohair, and it contains some Norwegian wool. I don't know what breed, because the person I was asking about it at the mill couldn't tell me what breed. Yeah, and it's the shape of this is presented in a ball. So this is called a yarn ball, I guess. This is what I know about it. It's very consistent. It's had quite a lot of, it's quite rough textured. I remember the first time when I touched yarns like this, I was like, oh, what have I done? I can't knit with this. I can't do a PhD about this. And the more I touched it, the less of an issue it became. Very interesting. Anyway, that's that yarn. What else have I got here? Okay, this one. This is, for those of you who've been watching right from the start, you may remember this. I've done all the processing on this myself. So this is Corriedale wool from just outside of Melbourne, near where I live. And I bought the fleece from the sheep, from the wool grower. Renelle, that's her name. Renelle and James have the farm. And she told me about this sheep because it had a lot of vegetable matter in the fleece. And she said, I'm so sorry, but he really likes to poke his head into the round bale right in the middle. So it gets a lot of grass on him. Anyway, so it did have a bit of vegetable matter, but it was my first time, so I didn't know any better. But so I did all the washing on this. I hand carded it into rollags. So it's a woolen spun, and yeah, smells pretty nice. I've knitted a vest with it, low pilling. Yeah, this is some of the original fleece I still have. It's undyed. This is the natural colour. It's slightly still in the grease. This is what I know about this wool. I've been to the farm actually where these sheep are grown. I've seen the grass, good looking grass. Seen their sheep shearing station, seen all the bags of wool. So I know a bit about this one. Then I have this one. Oh, let's take all the tags off. Because tags also will tell us about authenticity, right? And I don't want to get into tag business, right? But we can imagine like a tag that's more kind of that kind of brown paper craft thing we might think is more authentic or natural or something, because the graphic design and the card itself and whatever, and the imagery on it is going to communicate something about being more natural, or something might, go in the other direction. So we're not looking at yarn labels, but you could do a whole PhD on this. This is also an Icelandic yarn. You see the lovely colour variations there. This is from someone who dyes yarn with natural dyes. This is dyed with madder root, and which is imported into Iceland from somewhere else. They do have an Icelandic one, but the root is so thin and tiny, it's like very difficult to harvest, so they mostly import that. This, I have no information about where the yarn comes from, but I do think it comes from the same commercial mill as this one, which, if that's correct, it means this is mostly Icelandic. It's also got mohair and some Norwegian breed. And I know what it's dyed with. I've been to the place where it's dyed. I've seen the dye pots. I've poked the spoon around in them. I've chatted to the dyer. So that's what I know This is a grey, sort of a mottled grey base. That's partly why some of those variations are there. So it's very lovely. Again, more rough textured, probably a little rougher than this because this is the Einband, the final one, I think it is. Anyway, that's what I know about that one. This one, it's lovely. This is Superwash Merino, and I don't know where the merino is from. I can't find that out. The details aren't given. This is dyed. I bought it from a dyer, so they don't do any of the processing before it comes to them in long hanks. That's how they buy it. And so they're buying these bases that anybody can buy, you know, as a wholesale purchase to have your own yarn dyeing business. And I can't find any data about where exactly that merino comes from. These are chemical dyes. They're not, they're called natural dyes. Yeah, it's a pretty big cup brand. It's very consistent. This is a merino singles. And so the thread circumference, the yarn circumference is very, very consistent. Which implies, you know, like a pretty big commercial enterprise. So I end up making a lot of assumptions about this because I don't know much about it, but the assumptions they're relatively well-educated assumptions about the nature of processing. So I know this has had a lot of commercial processing, partly because it's superwash, partly because the consistency of it, and partly because the amount that this company sells, it's huge, so big scale. This one is lovely. This is from one of the mini mills in Iceland, and this is a mill that I've worked at, and I possibly actually was part of making this yarn. I think I was. I bought it before we put labels on it. So I'm just like, if I had the label, I'd go, oh yeah, I think I was there for that. Anyway, so I know that this is all Icelandic yarn. I know everything else that has gone into this because I was there doing it. I've seen the fleece. I probably wound these skeins. And I know how that production facility works, and all the different things that go in it because I've been there and worked there. Yeah, so I know it's all Icelandic. I know what kind of processing. This is undyed. This is a combo of some white and a brown that's gone in together. Yeah, I guess they're the things I know about this. And it's interesting, it's just occurring to me in the moment. There's obviously things I know about this from different ways of knowing, right? So some of these things I know because I read it online or I went and asked somebody about it. Others I know because I was there. And then there's a way of knowing with this one, but even more so with this one, that is like a somatic knowing. Like my hands know a lot about this wool actually, and my body knows a lot about this wool. I had injury, like overuse injuries from this. So there's a kind of a knowing that's very hard to articulate that I have about or with this wool. And a little bit with this. This is a bit more mediated by machinery, what I know about this wool in terms of what my body knows. And then the other ones I had nothing to do with their production. So my body doesn't know much about them other than what I know now at this consumer end when I touch it. And then when I go to make something with it, I will learn more about it with my body then. Okay. So these are the, 5 wools. How are you ranking them? Feel free to share your ranks in the comments. I'm going to tell you mine in a moment, but feel free to put your rankings in the comments. Or maybe you just don't even think about yarn like this in terms of what's more authentic or real or not. And I would love to hear about that too, because as someone who has somehow developed a ranking system like this, I would love to know how and why others haven't. I think that would be super interesting as well. So my rankings, this I rank as the least authentic. I don't know anything about the source of the yarn. and I've never been to any of their facilities. I know it's part of a big thing going on, and there's just a lot of things I don't know about it. And I've had nothing to do with it. I bought it at a stall at a market. The person who I bought it from is not anything to do with the company. They're a reseller. So, yeah, didn't know anything about that one. The next one is, or, you know, have any kind of personal connection to it. I think the next one I rank is like the second most authentic or real is this commercially spun Icelandic, or mostly Icelandic. The ball shape does make a bit of an impact for me. But I know that it's done in a big mill. I know it's not 100% Icelandic. It is 100% wool. I know it's chemically dyed. I know more machines and sort of fewer hands have sort of been part of this. My hands weren't part of making it. I have been to the mill though. So, and I have spoken to people who work there. I have knitted with it. So I have had some contact and first-hand experience of the facility and how they do it. So this one comes next. This one I think is the next one. Because I can't confirm the information about the yarn, I'm almost 100% confident that I know, but again, not entirely sure. But I know that this is hand dyed with natural dyes. You know, I've been there, I've seen the operation, I've chatted to the person who does it. They've given me a little bit of a rundown on all the different sort of techniques and why this, why that, what the rusty nails are for in the dye. So that relational aspect, of course, and seeing the sort of the labour-intensive hand dyeing operation, for me just kind of makes it more authentic somehow, right? This one's next. Well, yeah, I've been to this mill, I've worked in this mill, my hands helped make this. I saw the fleece and everything that went into it. And as I was scanning it up, I was probably like, I'm so in love with this, I've got to buy some. So, you know, like I'm very personally involved with this and I know what went into doing it. It's all very natural. It's 100% Icelandic. I know the people who make it and run the place and sell it. And it's a very, I know the machines, more or less. It's a very authentic for me, actually, very authentic. This one probably comes in like a little bit more, but actually I don't really think there's anything in it, which I thought was really interesting. I thought, oh, I'm going to think this one's the most authentic. But when I sit with it, I just think, I don't think so. So I think these come in the same. But, you know, I brought this fleece from a local grower. My hands were on every stage of it. So for me, it's like, these two are the most authentic, actually. And I don't really, I don't distinguish between these. When I think about it, like I think about this another skein of wool I've got from a mini mill that I have been to, but I've never worked in. I don't really know the processes. I don't know who they get the fleece from or anything like this. I just trust that what they say on the label is correct. I still don't think it's less authentic than this, but there is something about it that I don't feel as close to. So there's some kind of affective state that my own personal involvement changes for me into how real the wool is. So it seems when I think about what am I basing my rankings on, knowing who made it and how they made it makes a huge difference, right? So knowledge is obviously essential to assessing authenticity, like what do we know about a product? But I think for me there's a couple of factors that within that knowledge, right, where there's a couple of factors that decide where something sits on my continuum. And so if you've also noticed what are the factors that impact yours, please include that in your comments. I would love to hear about it. But for me it was the place, like where does the wool come from? So even though I do trust that this is 100% wool, 100% a merino, for some reason, not knowing where those sheep were grown makes a big difference to me in terms of ranking authenticity. As I said before, it's not rational. It's really not rational. But the other thing, and knowing where I know where this came from. I know where this came from. I know where a lot of this came from, but not all of it, right? I don't know where the mohair comes from. I'm not sure what breed of Norwegian wool. These things would make a difference to me. Not rational. The other thing I noticed is it's actually about bodies and machines. So the more I know, or the more that I am assuming that machines have been involved in processing, the less authentic I rate it. Again, not rational in many ways, but the more human bodies have been involved, like the more hands touching it, the more eyes looking at it and assessing things visually, the more authentic I deem it. And again, the fibre itself, you stick it under a microscope or you do all these other tests with it, it's going to be the same. But there's something about that, how human was the process, that impacts authenticity. For me, I suspect that's going to be the same with the pigs as I read in that book, but I think that might... No, I'm going to stop before I make a universalizing, generalizing comment that's going to be really inaccurate. Anyway, that's what I noticed for me when I experiment with this ranking about what are the criteria that actually make a difference. I had thought, or what doesn't make a difference to me is the kind of dye. I actually don't care whether it's chemical dye or natural dye. I don't know much about dyeing. I have done some at home. I've done some in the mill. I did some at a dyeing factory outside of Canberra. So I don't know a lot about it, but a little bit. But it doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect my ranking actually, which I think is interesting. It would make sense if it did. I imagine it does for some people. Natural dyes would be like super important and be more authentic, and that just makes sense. The one thing that doesn't make as much difference as it used to, for me, is the way it's presented. So is it in a ball? Is it in a cake? Is it in a skein? I mean, cakes is usually something you do at home. Not always, you can buy them in cakes. I used to feel like this was less authentic. This was more authentic. And I kind of poo-poo all that's in bowls. I just turn my nose up at it. It's so ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. But this has changed since working in a mill. Because I partly just see how they're both done, and also appreciate the effort that goes into putting them into a freaking ball. It can be, depends on the machines, but it can be a total pain. And then you don't have to do the work of putting them into a cake. But I actually like knitting from a cake better, so it doesn't bother me. But it doesn't really impact my sense of authenticity anymore, but it used to. Probably because most of the big commercially made yarns are sold like this. And this has become kind of symbolic of something more, a smaller business, smaller producer, a one-person show kind of thing is doing this because of the additional labour to get here. And not everybody, not just additional labour, this is a machine that's doing this, right? So the additional machinery needed and time for that. So most yarn dyers, of course, aren't doing that. They're just dyeing, drying, getting it into skein. Anyway, what were your main criteria? I would love to know. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about pigs a lot, but also about this notion of authenticity. And this book is teaching me a lot already and prompting a lot of thinking for me about just the different stages and practices of producing fibres and how they are then translated or interpreted in different ways to a consumer. So that's what I've been thinking about. What have I been making? Well, not much knitting. I have been doing a lot of sewing, but I'm not going to show you all that because it's not what the blog is about. I have made a little bit of progress on that diaphanous shawl. I didn't bother getting it because it's just hectic here with all the wool anyway. But It's a lace, I'm doing to the lace version, and I'm knitting with mohair on its own. It is the first and last time I'm ever going to do that. If you ever see me on this vlog telling you how I've cast on a mohair only thing, please remind me in the comments that I hate it and that I should stop now. Anyway, I am liking the project though, because I seem to keep getting my stitch count right, which is a shock, and it's for my daughter, and I do love making things for her. So the saga with the red cardigan continues. Also, I'm not showing it here because I'm grumpy with it. Anyway, I went to the yarn store to get more of that amazing dark red mohair that I was going to redo the whole thing with, and they didn't have any. And so I must admit, I did swear in frustration in the store, not very loud, but I just took the hint that, you know, just leave it. So I'm going to shelve that project until I get back from my next field trip. I think I will frog it out though, because I don't want to leave the wool all knitted for another 5 months or so. If I pull it out now and just wind it back into a cake, I might not need to relax it again. It might be fine. I'm going to focus on the other cardigan and the scarf and try and get those done, but also the spinning. So I showed you the light brown, so that's from last week. Turns out there's over 700 grams of that, 760 or something. I thought there was 300. And I think there's just as much in the light grey. So it's going to be a big spin, which I'm very excited about. But one of the things I did make this week, look at these. Oh my God. These, it's actually, this fleece is still going. Did I get 5? I've done 5. I wish you could smell it. Oh my God, because I didn't like scour these really intensely, they're still a bit greasy, so they smell, anyway, they smell really good and they feel really nice. Anyway, so there's actually still a bit more of this that I've just got to kind of loosen up and put through the carder, and then I'm going to weigh it and see. I'm not really sure what percentage to put this in, because these are going to be, this is going to be the flex. So this, sorry, I'm just holding them as a whole bulk thing. This, it's like a cool beard or something. Anyway, these are going to be the flex, so it's going to be a blended grey and brown, like mid-grey and mid-brown kind of colour, and then put these flecks through it. And I must admit, in my imagination, it's so fabulous. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I am going to do a test. I think I said last time I wasn't sure. I think I'm really going to do a test, because that's a lot to card up. Like, what's that going to be? 1.5, at least 1.5 kilos. It's bonkers. It's going to be a lot to card up and then regret. So I am going to do a little test one, and then I will spin it and knit it. So I'll test all the way to a knitted swatch, so I can see what the surface looks like before I commit to doing the whole thing. But yeah, that's what I've been making these babies, and it's quite satisfying. I love the new drum carder. Okay, that's what I've been making this week. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for playing along with the experiment and sharing your thoughts if you're doing that. That's really interesting. Yeah, see you next week.